Okay, yeah, I did.
Okay. I don't have like the speaker notes pulled up because I'm presenting, but it just I'll do the
Oh,
first three and then it's every other one, okay?
okay, sure.
Okay. Uh, I guess we'll just start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Abhilash Lankalapalli, and I will be the undergraduate teaching assistant for BrainBridge Connections. Today, I have Trishith, who's also going to be working with me and helping you guys understand how to better provide your high school students with a better understanding of how to do research, how to properly conduct it, and how to effectively write a research paper. So today is going to be our first module, and over here we have the first module being Introduction to Research Papers. So on that note, let's start. To begin, let's describe the structure of a research paper. I'm sure most of you have already read research papers and already know about this, but just a generic overview. There's the abstract, which is a concise summary of the paper, and it's not really longer than 250 words. And it's going to give you an overview, the purpose, just some generic methods or basic methods, and then just the main findings and conclusions. This is basically just an overall summary that's going to help you understand the paper, and it should also be something that the students should be working on to ensure that they accurately and properly write this so that the people reading their paper will understand. Make sure that when you're going over the paper with the student, you identify the study's purpose and the scope, and you make sure that the student notes it down, understand the methods used, and the student is able to describe them, and note the key findings and conclusions. On top of that, it would be preferable if you were able to describe the paper's relevance to your research interests.
After the abstract comes the introduction. So in the introduction basically just provides some background information for the research and outlines the study's importance. It outlines a research problem and states a question or hypothesis that the researchers have. As a reader, the introduction should help you understand the context and significance of the study and what the researchers aim to achieve. Just make sure you grasp the background and context of the research, recognize the significance and objectives of the study, understand the research question or hypothesis, and evaluate the relevance of the study's goals to your research.
The third step of an effective research paper is the methods. The entire point of a methods section is to detail how the research was conducted, including the study design, participants, materials used, and the procedures that are followed. As a reader, this section should allow you to assess the reliability and validity of the study. The most important part in effectively writing a research paper is the methods section, and in order to do so, you have to ensure that the methods utilized in this research study are replicable. This ensures that other individuals rewriting the paper or reconducting the experiments will receive the same exact results to ensure that there's no skewing of data. It's also going to help you understand and process and evaluate if the methods are appropriate for this specific research question. Some of the notes that we'd like you to keep in mind while working with your high school student would be to review the study and research approach, understand who or what is being studied, and the materials and procedures that are used, whether it's an inductive approach or a deductive approach, and assess the reliability and replicability. And lastly, evaluate the appropriateness of the methods. So if you were to use something to evaluate chemical properties, it wouldn't make sense to count the amount of liters in something and so on.
Following the methodology comes the results section. The results section presents the findings without interpretation. It basically provides the results of the methodology. It includes data in the form of text, tables, and figures. As a reader, focus on understanding what the researchers found. Pay attention to significant data points, trends, and patterns presented in this section. Some the following information should be went over with the student. Identify key findings and results. Review data presented in tables and figures. Note any significant trends or patterns. Understand the outcomes without interpretation, and assess the clarity and organization of the results.
Next, we have the discussion section, which is usually used to interpret the results and explain their implications. This is going to connect the findings of the research question and compare them with previous studies and connect it to the real world. As a reader, this section helps you understand the broader impact that the findings and any limitations have of the study today. Some of the notes that we'd like you to keep in mind is to understand the interpretation of the results. So whether or not it supports the hypothesis or supports the null hypothesis. Compare the findings with the previous research on the similar topic. Recognize the significance and the implications of the study, so whether or not it will be beneficial or what the negative implications could be associated with. Note any limitations or weaknesses, and also consider suggesting future research directions. This would be also helpful to introduce within the conclusion as well.
Lastly comes the conclusion. The conclusion summarizes the main findings and their importance, and restates the question and highlights the key results. It can also suggest practical applications or future research directions. As a reader, this section helps you see the overall impact and importance of the study. Make sure to summarize the main findings, understand the significance of the results, note the restated research question, consider practical applications of the research, and review suggested future research directions.
Next, we have the different types of research papers that you and your high school student will encounter. First, there's empirical studies, which are papers that are based on actual experiments or the observations. They're used typically in sections like the abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, and conclusion. They provide original data and findings and make them a primary source of information. In reading them, try and focus on understanding the design, the methodology, how they collected the data, and how they analyzed this data. This will be helpful for you and your high school student to understand, as this can be replicated within their own research paper. Some things to note down while working with the student would be to identify the study's purpose and hypothesis and how they arrived at it. Understand the methods for data collection. Review the results and how they are presented. Evaluate the discussion for interpretation and implications, and consider the study's limitation and areas for future research.
Next, we have literature reviews. Literature reviews summarize and synthesize existing research on a specific topic. They do not present new experimental data, but provide an overview of what is already known. As a reader, literature reviews help you understand the breadth and depth of research in a particular area and identify gaps or inconsistencies in the existing literature. Some things you should note with your student are understanding the scope and focus of the review, noting the key studies and findings summarized, identifying trends and patterns in the literature, recognizing gaps or areas needing future research, and evaluating the author's synthesis and conclusions.
Next, there are theoretical articles, which discuss new or existing theories and provide the framework for understanding the certain phenomenon. These research papers are based on logical reasoning and existing research rather than focusing on new experiments. They instead focus on the certain phenomena. When reading these theoretical articles, focus on understanding the proposed theories, their basis, and their implications. So some things to keep in mind would be to understand the main theory or the framework presented, review the logical arguments and the reasoning, identify the basis and support for the theory, and consider some of the implications and the article's contribution to the field that it's associated with.
Next, we have methodological articles. Methodological articles introduce new methods or improve existing ones for conducting research. These papers are valuable for understanding innovative techniques and their applications. As a reader, these articles help you learn about new tools and approaches that can be used in your own research. Make sure to understand the new research method or the improvement proposed. Review the details and procedures of the method. Identify the advantages and potential limitations. Consider the applications of the method, and evaluate the impact on future research practices.
Next, we have case studies, which provide an in-depth analysis of a single subject, event, or group. They're useful for understanding complex issues in real-world contexts. When reading case studies, focus on specific details of the case, the context, and the conclusions drawn by these researchers. Some things to understand would be understand the context and the background, specific details or events described and summarize these, the main findings and conclusions, and also consider the implications and the transferability to other contexts. So how does this case study apply to a case study of a dissimilar field or another field?
Lastly, we cover meta-analyses. Meta-analyses combine data from multiple studies to draw broader conclusions. They use statistical techniques to synthesize findings, provide more robust evidence, and as a reader, meta-analyses help you understand the overall trends and effects of numerous studies. Some things you should go over with your student are understanding the research question addressed, reviewing the selection criteria for included studies, identifying the statistical methods used for synthesis, noting the overall findings and conclusions, and lastly, considering the implications and limitations of the analysis.
And that'll be all for today. Thank you.